This is the Sultan Salahuddin Abdul Aziz Shah Mosque. Completed in 1988, it's still the largest mosque in Malaysia, capable of housing more than 20,000 worshippers at one time. It's still one of the largest in Southeast Asia and held records for the largest religious dome and the tallest group of minarets. Here we have another Malaysian icon. In fact, a Shah Alam icon as well. And it's this, the all-new Toyota Corolla. Everywhere you go, every far corner of the planet, there is a Corolla and everyone knows what it is. In fact, it's one of the longest running monikers in the auto industry, alongside iconic names such as the Beetle, the Mustang, the 911 even. In over 50 years of its existence, Toyota have sold nearly 50 million units of the Corolla. I reckon it's more famous than the late Michael Jackson himself. The Corolla first started life in the form of the KE10 in the mid-60s, and not long after, it was the first Toyota to be locally assembled right here in Shah Alam under Champion Motor. As for the 12th generation model, it's no longer built here, but now imported from Thailand. Unlike the previous model, you don't get the 2-litre option anymore. Instead, you get the 1.8E variant and this high-spec 1.8G variant, priced at 128,000 and 136,000 respectively. Just like the Camry that we reviewed recently, the new Corolla also rides on the Toyota New Global Architecture platform, specifically the GAC platform, which underpins the CHR and also the new Lexus UX. This new platform revolves around 3 key principles: stability, agility, and visibility. So it's got a lower center of gravity, double wishbones at the rear, a lower sitting position, repositioned side mirrors for better visibility, and styling that's just unlike any other C-segment sedan at the moment. Even from the previous generation model, there were already hints that Toyota is adopting a more futuristic look for the Corolla, and with this latest evolution, wow! I never thought I'd see the day where the Corolla, a car for the working middle class, could look this exciting, expensive even. The front end now looks much more aggressive, cleaner, sharper, with a front grille that looks like the one from the Camry, although I'd argue that this one looks much more pleasing to the eye, whereas the one in the Camry looks like In this 1.8G model, you get LED headlamps, halogen for the E variant, 17-inch wheels, 16 for the E variant, keyless entry, although only for the driver door. I found that to be quite annoying. It gets a little fairer at the back though, with LED combination tail lamps across both variants, and the boot, with a much wider opening for easy loading and unloading, is just absolutely massive. As a whole, I think we can agree that it has a look that's hard to dislike. And if you opt for the 1.8G, it'll be well equipped as well. Compared to its closest rival, the Honda Civic, although it's not a bad looking car, I've never been too keen of that rear 3/4 section. And let's face it, even with the latest facelift model with updates in its aesthetics and equipment, it's a look that's been around for a few years now. Whereas this looks a lot more proportionate, to me at least. So I guess we can all agree that it's job well done on the exterior design. Before, no one would look at a Corolla and say, wow, nice looking car. In fact, no one would even take notice of a Corolla, but now, look at this! And it's got all sorts of aerodynamic things as well by the taillights and the A-pillars, such as these aerofoils here, or sakana, which means fish in Japanese. Why fish? Well, apparently they mimic the shape of a fish for their low drag attribute, and this apparently makes the car a lot more stable at high speeds and reducing wind noise by making wind flow smoother through the car. Tuna fish, I'm guessing? Japanese tuna? Well, you can say it's a gimmick. I used to think of these things as gimmicks as well, but the ride inside has been very quiet. As for the ride, let's first talk about the experience of the Corolla from the back seats. So I'm about 180 centimeters tall and I've got the driver positioned to my ideal sitting position. There's plenty of leg room, plenty of knee room. But if I were to be seated upright like so, there's actually quite limited headroom. And in that sense, I think the Civic is a little roomier. Speaking of sitting upright, These seats, although very comfortable, the posture is a little too upright. I'm not sure if I can sit like that for too long. Maybe it's just me. Aside from that, I only have one other grief from the experience being in the back here, and it's the storage space by the door panel. You can only fit one of these small bottles, and that's pretty much it. Some of y'all might think it's not that big a deal, but it's quite significant to me. Elsewhere, you get rear air vents, but no USB ports, a manual rear sunshade, armrest here with 2 cup holders, and the ride. The ride is so supple, the car just absorbs all the bumps so well, and because of the TNGA platform, the chassis is so rigid that when the car is going through corners, you barely feel any body roll. As for being up front here, there'll be 3 things that immediately get to your attention. How comfortable these seats are, the driving position is just spot on, and how smooth this thing is to drive. If you're taking your own sweet time, just cruising along, this is as soothing as a cup of coffee on a rainy Sunday morning. But if you feel a little naughty, this car is more than capable to comply with your demands. There is, however, one slight issue, and there's no other way to say it. It needs a little more push. From what I've experienced, 70-80% of the time driving around Klang Valley, for example, in stop-go traffic, slow-moving traffic, the engine is perky enough, responsive enough. But when the roads open up and I need a little more power to, say, perform an overtaking maneuver, it needs a little more encouragement, a little more motivation to get going. I feel like, and this is just my opinion, a car of this stature, a C-segment vehicle, a car that people strive to buy, spend over 100,000 ringgit to own as a means of upgrading, this aspect of the drive should have more attention paid to it. It's a good thing that the ride and refinement more than makes up for it, and because of this, I think the gap between the Camry and the Corolla is now a lot smaller. You get somewhat Camry levels of comfort and refinement for Corolla money. Speaking of which, and this is just my personal opinion, I'm thinking out loud, for the longest time up until today, people strive, they work hard to buy a Continental vehicle because they think that those cars are just more sturdy on the road. But now, whether it's the Civic or this new Corolla with its new chassis, I think you can get hints of that for a lot less money. You might think that I'm exaggerating, but after one test drive, I think you'd be more inclined to agree with me. Adding to this smooth drive are the 17-inch Michelin Primacy 4 tyres, although it'd be nicer to have PS4 tyres like the Civic. Although the ones in the Civic are 18-inch in size, so I think over time when it comes to changing them, it might be more expensive for the Civic. Personally, I like how the dashboard looks, although the floating effect of the center display could look a little slimmer. Some might argue that it looks a little too bulgy. And this gear lever console is far better looking than those zigzaggy formats they used to adopt. I think those should be killed, burned, buried, and never to be brought back alive again. What I would have loved to see more in this cabin though is additional storage space and a instrument cluster, whether digital or analog, one that befits the exterior design of the car. You have the exterior looking so cool, futuristic, aggressive, and then when you come in here, you get this bluish digital instrument cluster that just looks meh. If you think about it, it's like wearing a nice top, nice pants, and then you show up with Crocs. Ugh. So on the equipment front, this 1.8G is actually very well equipped. In fact, if you compare it with the 2-litre model from before, it's even better equipped. So they've cut down on the engine options, taking away the 2-litre model, but they've added more value everywhere else. Is that fair? I think so. Because with everything that's going on, when you factor in all the elements, if they were to offer a 2-litre variant and give it all the bells and whistles, it could be nudging 150,000. Now who'd want to buy that? The 1.8G now even comes with Toyota Safety Sense, and from what I've experienced in the last few days, it's been quite effective. The DRCC accelerates and slows down the car unintrusively, and the lane tracing system in particular helps keep the car in the center of the lane, something I feel like Malaysians need help with. And the pre-collision braking system on this, rest assured you'll be taken care of if for some reason you decide to not pay attention on the road. Now as for the cost, I know there's grief about the price, which has gone up. The current 1.8E is 8,000 more and the current G is 13,000 more than before. But I think that's the cost of improvement, isn't it? The chassis has gotten better by leaps and bounds, and so is the refinement, and you get so much more tech. The way I see it, there's just no way that prices would ever go down, so I'd expect value in other areas of the car, and in this, evidently there is. In fact, this 1.8G at 136,000 is more well equipped than the 2-litre model from before at 138,000. Between the current G and E variants, there's a huge difference in what you get. The E variant may be 8,000 cheaper than the G, but it doesn't get wireless charging, electric handbrake, a blind spot monitor, adaptive high beam, a panoramic view monitor, no leather seats, no dual zone air conditioning, no Optitron meter, no paddle shifters even. Between this and the Civic, I think it's going to be quite hard to choose between them, and it's going to be down to mostly personal preferences. On one hand, you have the Civic, which is a little more powerful, especially with the 1.5-litre turbocharged engine, but on the other hand, you have this with a really well-sorted chassis, stable on the highway, really comfortable and refined. But if you ask me, I'd go for the Corolla, and I'd specifically go for the 1.8-litre E variant because I feel like I don't need all these fancy creature comforts. I think they're a bit frivolous, and personally, I'm all about the drive. So, is this car for you? If you're still keen on owning a C-segment sedan for around 120 to 130,000 ringgit, something that's safe, effortless and fun to drive, relatively spacious but supremely comfortable to carry your young family around, then yes, I definitely recommend that you have a look at this because I think at this moment, it's definitely one of the best, if not the best, in the business. But if you think for that kind of money, you're better off topping up a little more, getting perhaps a crossover or an SUV, something with a larger presence, higher sitting position, perhaps even more space, then no, this might not be the car for you. For more information on the all-new 12th generation Toyota Corolla, do log on to AutoBuzz.my. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button, share it, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon for the latest notifications on our newest videos. The brakes are so strong and it's so... goodness, massive. Hey, shit lah, the door, bloody thing locked way. LEDs, why? Wow, what the f, man?